we are now in full-on pre-election mode here. That's going to implicate what votes are being taken in the Senate, which votes aren't. It is going to implicate a whole host of things, obviously in the House as well, but particularly in the Senate. It's also going to implicate what the DOJ does in its multiple investigations with Donald Trump, and it's going to implicate what Donald Trump does in the meantime. But first, as you know, Jackson, Mississippi, a city of 180,000 people, it's got 60% of its population.
80% black.
80%?
Black. It's a very, prominently black city.
And their water supply and mechanisms for maintaining it have been incredibly underfunded over the years. I mean, this is, when we talk about these states where they have low taxes, and it is really just a matter of time. And if it's not a matter of time, although it always is, it's also a specific matter of which part of their citizenry are going to pay to subsidize the low taxes for wealthy people. That's what it is. I mean, almost all of our politics is a function of who is profiting and who is actually paying for those profits in one form or another. That is all our politics. And more often than not, the dynamic is low-income people, middle-income people, society at large is essentially subsidizing the upward redistribution of money or the profit-taking of corporations. And that's basically the story of American politics. And then the way they address that dynamic very often is, well, we can solve that by giving more profits to the private sector. I give you Governor Tate Reeves of Mississippi.
Who is not Ryan Grimm, just so people understand. Yes. If you're watching on YouTube.
Second question, if you would be supportive of any privatization efforts of the Jackson water system. You've talked about your concerns about the management from the city.
I'm open to all options. Privatization is on the table. Having a commission that oversees failed water systems, as they have in many states, is on the table. So again, I'm open to ideas. I'm open to conversation. I'm open to discussion. I don't go into those conversations lightly.
I mean, here's the deal. What is unclear in this is there is a difference between hiring an outside firm to manage your water system versus we're going to sell our water system to raise funds to build it up to a private entity that is going to have, some degree of regulation on what they can do for pricing for the next 15 or 20 years. And then all of a sudden it's off the races.
And that's what they did before, though, right? That latter option. The reason they're in this predicament is because they had a contract with Siemens in 2013. It was something like $90 billion. And they installed faulty water systems, essentially, and they checked out. There was no the meters, I think, were entirely off, and it created this system where it was for years before even this crisis. There was a shortage of water, E. coli outbreaks, people's water getting shut off and not working properly. So it's tone deaf at the very least to suggest privatization, given the system, what caused where they are today with this. I mean. And in terms of the contracts that they give out, like these corporations also know, maybe we can cut corners here a little bit. They got sued, Siemens, and they had to settle with the city because of how terribly they did with the water system there.
When people ask me like what my problem with nuclear power is, it is basically that.
Yeah.
That like, am I really going to trust an entity, a private entity, to not cut corners and to not see corners as like, well, these corners don't even have to be sharp. They can be rounded. Believe me. And I'm not in any way incentivized by the billions of dollars in profit to see that it's still safe to round these corners. And here's the other part about the independent commission. The fundamental problem is that you need a system that is as democratic as possible, because what we saw in Flint was a perfect example of a relentless refusal to respond to what the citizens were saying about their water. And it was a relentless refusal because they could afford to be, they were so insulated, because you remember it was taken over by a special manager, essentially, the city. There was no elected official that had a say in any of this. They were so insulated from the citizens of their city that they didn't have to listen. And that is why these type of arrangements are so problematic. But we'll see. I mean, I wonder what happens with, I guess it just provides short-term aid when Biden said, declared a state of emergency, a federal state of emergency there. But we need to have greater federal involvement in, I think, making sure that at the very least, cities have safe drinking water for their citizens.
I think like this is a victory for states' rights, that this is the options that are on the table, and not saying like a federal disaster emergency, for like a federal climate emergency, and make this part of it. Water is absolutely going to be part of it. And like they say, that you want these decisions to be as democratic as possible. And part of that is you can't allow people to sort of escape democracy by moving to the suburbs into these gerrymandered districts and leaving all that, because that's what happened with this water system over time, is white flight basically. And you have to have you have to federalize all of this stuff basically.